Selection is the systematic process of deciding which applicants to hire as new employees, consider for promotion, or move to other jobs. Let's take a look at the best practices of employee selection. As you know, research has shown satisfied employees tend to be more productive. A strong person-job fit maximizes the benefits of both employers and employees in the employment relationship. In contrast, when there's a poor person-job fit, companies can expect to face higher turnover and absenteeism, along with lower employee morale and productivity. At a minimum, all parts of the selection process need to be reliable, valid, and unbiased. Reliability indicates how well a selection procedure yields consistent result over time and across raters. The key word here is consistent. We all want a reliable car to drive. Just ask anyone who's broken down on the side of the road. We want to be able to count on the car performing the same way we use it each time. We need reliable selection measures just like we need reliable transportation. Several types of reliability are important for selection. First, selection procedures need to be reliable over time. If an applicant takes a test today and then retakes it a week from now, we should expect the scores to be similar. This correlation between the scores means that there's test-retest reliability. Second, selection procedures need to be reliable across raters. If 3 people interview an applicant for a job and are using the same questions and the same scoring mechanism, they should evaluate the interviewee in a similar manner. If they do so, we would have high inter-rater reliability. Selection tests must also be valid. Validity is the extent to which selection methods measure what's supposed to be measured and how well it does so. A personality test should measure personality. An accounting test should measure accounting skill and knowledge. When we talk about validity, we're really focusing on how much evidence there is to support the conclusions that are being made based on the scores of the selection measure. Simply stated, we are investigating the job-relatedness of the selection measure. In addition to being reliable and valid, selection measures must also be unbiased. Unfortunately, bias often creeps and compromises the fairness of our selection processes. Bias occurs when one's personal views are allowed to affect the outcome of the decision-making process, rather than the decision being based on the results of the selection measures. Selection methods can be grouped into 2 categories: initial screening and final screening methods. In initial screening, reviewing of application information and collecting additional preliminary information to decide which applicants are worthy of more serious consideration is completed. Final screening then takes a more in-depth look at applicants who have made it through that initial screening process, including reviewing references and conducting background checks. If you've ever applied for a job, you've probably completed an application form. This application form gives the employer a first impression of you. Applications and resumes serve similar but different purposes. Applications are standardized forms employers use to collect job-related information about applicants. The information is reviewed and used to determine which applicants meet minimum job requirements and should remain in the selection process. Behavioral assessments generally use information from current employees to create personality profiles for evaluating applicants that are likely to be a good fit in terms of job and culture. Review of applications and resumes narrows down the list of applicants who will receive further consideration. A screening interview can be used to gauge an applicant's fit and actual interest in the position. A typical screening interview consists of the manager or someone from HR calling the applicant and conducting a short telephone screen. Ability tests, sometimes called aptitude tests, measure basic talents, abilities of individuals. In the context of staffing, they provide information about an individual's potential to perform the job. Achievement tests or competency tests measure an applicant's current knowledge or skill in relation to job requirements. Rather than focus on a candidate's potential, these tests examine the extent to which a job candidate can actually perform the tasks. During the selection process, you will need a way to assess whether applicants have personality traits that are important to your job. When used as part of the selection process, personality inventories can identify the extent to which the applicant possesses certain characteristics, such as assertiveness, self-confidence, conscientiousness, motivation, and interpersonal attributes. Interviews are the most frequently used selection method. Following our coverage of the main types of interviews, we'll discuss the most significant research about those interview methods. Keep in mind that interviews are the most widely used selection method. However, they're not always the most reliable or valid for that matter. We'll take a look and discuss this in much more detail. A large percentage of selection interviews are unstructured. The interviewer, oftentimes the hiring manager, will have a general idea of what a successful applicant should be able to do and know and communicate in an interview. The interviewer will ask the candidate job-related questions, but without defined format. A more structured interview is much more appropriate. The premise of behavioral interviewing is that past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. Rather than simply asking a candidate how they would handle a situation, the interviewer asks the candidate how they've handled a similar situation in the past. Employers use a variety of means to do applicant screening with the goal of ensuring that applicants are providing complete and truthful information through the selection process. These screening methods include reference checks, background checks, credit reports, and honesty tests. Reference checks require applicants to provide the names of individuals that the employer can contact through the selection process. These individuals are able to provide more information about the candidate and confirm information the candidate has provided from a third-party perspective. Employers all too often shy away from completing reference checks due to concerns about defamation and other issues. Rest assured that reference checks are a great way to bring in third-party information, and frankly the only way that we verify third-party information on a regular basis through a selection process. A recent survey found that 69% of organizations have conducted criminal background checks on job applicants. These criminal background checks should be done after a conditional offer is made. The reason we do criminal background checks is to avoid negligent hiring, which occurs when the employer does not conduct a background check on an employee and that person commits a crime at work similar to a crime he or she has committed in the past. Employers need to be cautious in using negative information they obtain and follow Fair Credit reporting standards when using third-party vendors for criminal background checks. Before an employer can take adverse action against an applicant, such as turning the applicant down for a job based on information in a background check, the applicant must be notified and given a copy of the consumer report the employer is using to make a decision. The employer must provide a copy of a summary of your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Following the process outlined provides the opportunity for the applicant to review the report and notify the employer of any errors. If adverse action is taken, the Act requires the applicant be notified orally, in writing, or electronically. The notice should include contact information for the reporting company, a statement of what you as the employer made in terms of your decision of adverse action, and instructions on how the applicant can refute the information. The applicant must also be told how to get additional information and free credit reporting through the company providing it. The Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988 requires all federal contractors to develop policies to ensure their employees are drug-free. Research has shown that employees who abuse drugs are more likely to miss work, be tardy, be involved in accidents, and file work comp claims. Therefore, the decision of whether to use drug tests is a serious one. An employer using drug testing needs to have a written policy and make sure it's in compliance with federal, state, and local law. Generally, a candidate must sign a consent form before being tested. Employees who are currently using drugs or alcohol are not protected under the ADA. Recovering drug users and alcoholics are covered. Prior to the passage of the ADA, employers could require a medical examination as a condition of employment. Now, the ADA specifies that a medical examination can be required only after the employment offer has been made. Employers requiring a medical examination of an employee should provide a copy of the job description to the examining physician for review of the requirements.